Amen. You know, I don't know if you ever read somebody else's diary. As a son of four boys and one girl, I never got a chance to really enjoy my sister's diary, but I know there's some who have. Well, we're almost like reading a private letter that Paul sent to Timothy, and in the lesson we've got today. And so as I read that, I thought about some of the books that I've read recently and that have helped to build on relationships. And one of the books that I went to was one by Gordon Livingston that is entitled, and this is so true for me, Too Soon Old, Too Late Smart. And in that little book, he talks about friendships. Well, you didn't need to laugh because it was mine. Okay, come on. I'm glad you're listening, but hang in here, okay? Now, but think about it. Relationships, just how critical. I mean, we take them for granted. We take for granted the relationships we have and the opportunities we have to build those relationships. I remember when I was in Park Forest, Illinois, I worked with a large group of young people, high school mainly, and we were getting ourselves ready for a mission trip. And so one of the things I liked to do, because we were going to go down into Appalachia, and I knew some of what they were going to see was not like anything at all that they've ever lived. And so one of the things I was trying to do was to help them to understand that we have a whole nonverbal message that we give. And if anybody's ever rolled their eyes at you, you know what I mean, right? A nonverbal message. And so I was trying to work with them. And then finally I asked the group, I said, what would be a key thought that you would want to have as you approached these people who are so different in experience than any of the experiences you've had? And I'll never forget, one young man said, I would like to think that they are our potential friends. How cool, right? How many times have you gone into a tough place? I don't care where it is, a tough place. And you're carrying the thought, I'm looking forward to this being an opportunity to have some new friends. Yeah, many times we are more about what we control than what relates in the category of friendship. But yet, as we look at the letter that we have from the writer that we believe may be Paul, or at least part of this 2 Timothy certainly is Paul. It sounds so much like the way he wrote and what he did, that we can pick up from this letter some keys to friendship. And believe me, as a church, we need to think about friendship. We really do. Because one of the factors of our life is that isolation and independence and doing it my way, being about me, is what's happening. In fact, we're losing some of the connectivity that we have with people because we walk by them looking at our phones. We don't even know who we walk by. You know that? I mean, have you noticed that? I mean, it's beginning to happen. I have done weddings. This is the craziest thing that ever happened. I had a wedding in Findlay, Ohio, and I was doing for a friend of mine, and they didn't talk to each other. The groom was in the pew while I was up here talking to the bride, and the bride and the groom were communicating through their phone. Jeez, I hope they take their phone to bed with them, because, man, there's no way anything's going to happen in that family, Jiminy crickets. But the point is that we can do that so easily, can't we? We can just do that. Well, Paul gives us some clues. In what he was saying. One of the things we start out with is that, and I'll use these words, okay? We are what we do. Think about it. First statement you can talk about when you get home. We are what we do. Now, Paul was quick to bring his credentials by saying, I have run the race. I have it's been a good fight. I have finished that race. But then he goes on to say to Timothy, now I need you. You see, I need relationship. I need the bond. Even though I can say to myself, I've done well, I'm doing well, I'm done well. It doesn't mean I don't need the relationship that we can have. Same with us, you see. We need to hear this because we know people not by what they promise or what they say or what they feel or think. We know people by what they do, and we must remember that because we are suckers. We really are for great promises. And we want it to work out. But we've got to remember that we know people by what we do. And the people who come to our church, to us, we're talking about us here. The people who come will know us by what we do. We can't just have that casual good morning and walk on by the person and never talk to the person again. Don't do that. It's a killer. Let me share experience with you. I know this personally. It happened to me in July of this year. Now, I don't see myself as a bashful person. I don't seem bashful to you guys, do I? Okay. They agree with me. I'm not a bashful person. So I've been invited to go to this church, and it was a desperate call that I got on the phone. The first thing the lady said to me was, our preacher quit. I had no idea what that meant. Okay, our preacher quit. I don't know. What is that? So I talked with her a while, and she was really upset, so I could tell something really happened. Yeah, that's what happened. I guess protocol doesn't mean anything to this guy or whoever it was, because right in the middle of the meeting, he stood up and said, I'm done. And he walked out. Cleaned out his office and took off, is the way she told it to me. So I kind of I felt like I'm in a bind, maybe I should really. So I figured, okay, I'll work with you for 2 Sundays and to give you a chance then to get some things worked out, because something's got to happen here. So I decide to go to the church early. I like being early anyway, but I'm going to go early to the church, and I would be there in time to kind of begin to meet people one at a time, because it's a little easier than meeting a whole group, and greeting people. So I went and I stood. I figured the most strategic place would be somewhere between the front door and the sanctuary. So that's where I stood. And as people came, I said, good morning. And some just looked at me and walked on by. Some said, good morning, and then walked on by. There was a group of 3 that were standing by the sanctuary door. So I thought, well, I can maybe talk to them. So I went over to them. They were holding cookies anyway, so there's a good chance I could get a cookie. But anyway, they were holding cookies, and I walked over to them, and I said, hello, I'm Roger LaWarre, and I'm here for the first time today. And they looked at me, and they said, well, good morning. And I put out my hand to shake it, and watch every of the 3, every one of them walk to the different location. I still have my hand, okay, but we as a church make a huge difference in people's lives. People just don't come. You and I just don't come here because we have nothing else to do. People don't choose to come to us because, I got nothing else to do, I might as well do it. No. They come because they hear about us. And we want them to hear the welcome. We want them to hear the care. the acceptance, the love that is ours because of the message and the power of God's Spirit in our life. And that's for each of us. So we are what we do, okay? That's the first thing in friendship. We are what we do. Another thing that I thought about, when I was reading on in Timothy, I read this part, and you heard this part too. It said, Alexander the coppersmith did me great harm. The Lord will pay him back for this, his deeds. And I thought, oh, well, yeah, God, salve your conscience there. You also must beware of him, for he strongly opposed our message. Now, in those words, there's a whole story, isn't there? I mean, there's a whole story about what took place as Paul was seeking to build relationship with this Alexander. And there was pain. You know, the rule of thumb is, and this is a rule of thumb about friendship, it takes two to build a friendship, but only one to end it. I would encourage us, you see, not to be the one that ends the potential friendship that comes as we all come together. We think we know everybody. I mean, I don't, because I don't know everybody. You all know that. I mean, I really have to work at that. But I want to, you know, and I know you as friends and family and those who I worship with, and I always appreciate that. But the people who are our visitors that we seek to welcome, you and I together and they make the possibility of a friendship that can blossom into the strengthening of our faith and the nourishment of our lives. Because we come here to be filled, don't we? We come to be renewed here. We come because it's here that the good news is, we're reminded of that good news. You know, every place else that I go with the TV on or wherever I am, it is not really good news to me. There's not a whole lot of good news. Even my teams lose. You see, come on. So, you know, what can I say? Even though I've had one real good shot this weekend. But the point is, you see, it happens to us. And those of us who know what it means to be together. Because this church is a church of families. You notice that? I mean, we noticed, Diana and I noticed, that there's a lot of relationship going on here. You know, family have generation after generation. So it's easy for us to think we're really friendly. Just like when I go home to our family in Ohio, we're really friendly because I know them all. I greet them all. We all talk. We laugh, everything. But it's not so for anyone who comes from the outside. So one of the lessons we learned is, let's not be like the Alexander in this story. Let's be the one who reaches out and builds and renews the strength. For we are what we do. And it takes two, at least, to make a friendship. And let's try to be those two to others. Now, the final thing that occurred to me, there's a lot of things that occurred to me, but the final one I wanted to share with you is the fact that when we get into situations, remember my hand was out there in the handshake? I kid you not. I have never had a feeling like that I could remember. I mean, you know, it's a weird, ugly feeling. It really is. To be able, when you put your hand out to shake and greet someone and there is no response except that they walk away. Now, you and I have a characteristic, and I'm generalizing here, but you and I have a characteristic that the question we ask in a situation like that probably has something to do with ourselves. How could I have done that better? What was wrong? Why didn't that work? What did I do? You see what I'm saying? We're asking all the wrong questions. When the real question has to be, what is going on here? You see, what's happening here? So that we can begin to move not inward, but outward. And we should never lie to ourselves. We shouldn't lie to anybody, but certainly we should never lie to ourselves. Paul says, nobody showed up. Nobody showed up when I was put on trial. Where were you? Nobody showed up. He didn't go into, oh, what's wrong with me? Oh, poor me, poor me. No, no, no. He was saying, it was by the power of God that I was saved from the lion's mouth. Otherwise, he looked at the bigger picture here, recognizing that even those who he thought would show up didn't. It wasn't about how bad he was or is, you see. It's about what's going on in the moment. And I want to say to you that when anybody walks through that door, anybody comes to this church, anybody that's visiting us, even when you and I meet each other, wherever we meet each other, there's always more going on than we ever can fathom or understand. And yet, we want to make it about us. You see what I mean? We want to make it about us. Let's give thanks always. Let's give thanks always. That even in the greeting of an individual who at that time has not the capacity to respond, even though we pull our hand back empty, let's remember that there is a power, a God factor, I call it. There's a God factor that is always at work within our life. We are what we do, the friendships that we can build to strengthen us. And we need not lie to ourselves, because the God factor is present. And we need to continue in our compassion, in our love, our friendship, bringing relentless compassion and hope through the love of Jesus Christ. You and I can do this. We can do this, can't we? We can do this. And that would be an amen. Praise be to God. Amen. Thank you.